Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm JayDreamerZ, and tonight we're talking about aliens. Who are the aliens? Aliens have existed all throughout our time, as far back as our records possibly could go. Now, of course, different people have come up with different names for aliens, and they've gone by names such as angels, demons, Anunnaki, Nephilim, fallen ones, spirits, demons. I think I said demons already. But we're going to be talking about these alien beings. And are there creatures that are not native to our world that occasionally come into our world and interact with us? That's what today's topic is going to be about. Enjoy as we go into the intro. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, sorry if I didn't transition fast enough from the intro there. I was typing something in the chat. I was typing, press 7 if you think I should be a new addition to Ancient Aliens, and press 1 if you think I should have my own show. Which I kind of do. Okay, I understand. I kind of do have my own show. All right, so today we're going to talk about aliens. So, let's start off with some things here. Some of you have seen my Secret of the L video I did a while back. Real simple video, me in my bedroom with my whiteboard, breaking down the root of the word alien, really, and talking about how it's related to the word El, like the Elohim, or Al, or Al, or Allah, or Eloah, which is, by the way, how we greet each other. We greet each other by basically saying Eloah, or Elohe, or hello, or aloha, or hola. Those are all derivatives of El, which essentially means strength, or may the blessings of the mighty ones be upon you, things of that nature. So today we're going to be talking about aliens, right? Let's talk about where the word comes from first. Essentially, getting right to the point, the word alien, the root of it is al, right? Which is essentially the name of God, which is, it could be written El or Al. Allah is one of those gods. Elohim or Eloah is another name for those gods, etc. And we are talking about the gods. We're talking about the gods. We're talking about the angels. Whatever words feel right for you. There's a lot of spider webs out there. There's a lot of webs of confusion. There's a lot of magical webs that have been cast, spells. They're basically web form spell casting. And so they develop little trigger words over time. And so when people hear certain words like aliens, angels, gods, whatever it may be, we tend to get really triggered whenever we hear those words, because we instantly have our own breakdown of what that word implies, especially how we fit in comparison to that word. That's our polarity in action, right? So here's the fact of the matter. The fact of the matter is, aliens have been around forever, for as long as we can remember. Now, here in the United States of America, we call anyone that was not born here and comes into our country an alien, right? They need to get a green card. They're an alien. They are alien to this land, which means they are not native, which means they were not born here, because the word native essentially means to be born, one who was born. That's why during Christmas time, when people celebrate the birth of Jesus, right, which we can get into more later if you want, everything to do with the plasma apocalypse, but that's called the nativity scene, when they show Jesus being born out in the freezing cold in a crib with no blanket and no fireplace and no campfire, no roasting marshmallow. I'm just kidding. Not really. I'm not really kidding at all. There's a whole lot to that. But that's a bit of a different topic. We're talking about the aliens, the Al, the elven race, as I like to refer to them as, because that's what they are. They are the ancient elves of old. They're the ones who have been handed down their likenesses and over the centuries, which we have cartoonified, and we have basically turned their likeness into a caricature version of the reality, right? Why is that? There's a lot of good reasons, I believe, that's for that. Brit's in the chat. She says, I'm a legal alien. Okay, well, hey. Well, let's talk about this, okay? Now, like many of you, I like to watch Ancient Aliens, the TV show, right? I watch it from time to time, and the things they talk about on that show, I want to jump in. I want to jump in there so much. I want to add my 2 cents. I want to contribute. I want to help out. So I'm constantly pausing the show, right? The last one I watched was called Alien Devastations. And they were basically talking about, and there is a theory out there that aliens, right? I have my own definition. I'll get into that in a little bit. But the aliens are basically responsible, possibly, for many of the world's cataclysms and catastrophes that have happened, right? So I want to start off with that and talk about that, because I believe that there is an understanding to be had there about that type of a thing. For example, many times, especially during the tsunamis of Indonesia, remember those? There was a huge earthquake out in the ocean, right? There's only one ocean, okay? And the ocean is the remnant of when our world was flooded. So for all the people out there that are like, I don't know about these cataclysm stories, I don't know if, dude, there is literally water all around our world. The world is today flooded. I did a whole video about it, okay? The ocean is the flood still here, okay? And we live on the island. So also, whenever you see any movie symbolism or television shows where they're talking about, and it's centered around an island, specifically and usually an island where people have their memories erased and they don't know who they are, or they forgot how to talk, or, there's all this crazy mystic stuff happening or whatever. That's our world. They're showing you our world. Our world is an island, essentially. Our continents, they're just big islands. That's all they are. And that's because of the last flooding that we had, the big deluge. Excuse me. All right. So, for example, in Indonesia, there was this there was this tsunami that had happened, right? And people say that right before the tsunami, they saw all these strange lights in the sky. Okay, let's stop right there. Okay, I've been an avid fringe researcher since I was a kid. Okay, I was watching X-Files. I was into all of it, and something that didn't make a lot of sense to me is how these advanced alien species that figured out how to bend time and fly great distances and keep from aging and all of this stuff that they have to have, technologically speaking, in order to just get here, according to academia, from the closest star system or whatever it is, right? There's a lot that goes into that. I've always had a problem with them crashing their UFOs when they get here. I've had a problem with them having headlights and backup lights or whatever any lights at all, right? Especially if they're supposed to be the watchers and they're supposed to remain silent and hidden. And no, I'm sorry. I personally am not, I don't see any reason why alien craft would have big old huge bright indicators of where they are. Lights, basically, right? But anyhow, I believe that those lights have everything to do with our world and our universe being electromagnetic in nature, and as above, so below. Whenever these huge cataclysms happen, right, especially ones that are worldwide, we're always going to see precursors. We're always going to see lights in the sky. We're always going to see strange electromagnetic activity, and how that electromagnetic activity, when it's in flux, affects animals, people, weather conditions, and things of that nature, right? I believe the lights in the sky are just that there are lights, right? But I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I don't discount the fact that beings that were not born in this realm that we live in here have come to this realm, and a part of their agenda is to get the heck out of this realm once they're allowed to, once the time opens up, once the portal opens and there's a connection between worlds, or worlds collide, or however people want to, mention it, basically. Hey, remember in the chat, if you want to get my attention, just type in @JayDreamerZ. I'll go ahead and chat with you live here. And of course, you can always call in anytime you see a little Skype dealio right there next to me. That's if you're a member of the Circuits of Time. The Circuits of Time are open, so if you're a member of the Circuits of Time, just go to the community tab, and the email that you need in order to plug into Skype to just give me a call is right there. It's just for those members. All right, so we're talking about aliens, the ancient El, or the Elohim, right? As it is talked about in the Bible, in the Quran, in every single religious text, basically. Sometimes they're referred to as angels, sometimes they're referred to as demons. Basically, here's what it boils down to. Whenever they do something that we appreciate, that we like, that supports our continued existence or promotes our health in any way, shape, or form, we see those aliens as the good guys. They're angels. Those ones must be angels. They're helping us out. But if they do something that is not favorable to our continued existence or to our health or whatever it may be, then we say, oh, those are demons. Those are the bad guys, etc. What if they're two sides to the same coin, right? What if they're basically the same? So on the Ancient Aliens, they were talking about how a lot of people believe that aliens are responsible for these worldwide cataclysms, right? And they started off talking about the Mayan calendar. The Mayan calendar was huge in 2012 because I don't know who did it. I don't know who broke down the Mayan calendar. I have not yet learned how to read the Mayan glyphs. I would love to at least figure out how to read the Mayan calendar so that I myself could reinterpret the dating of it, because it seems to me like I've mentioned this a couple times before, but for example, those who built the oh, check that out. How did I get that up there? That's pretty cool. I got the chat up on the screen. I didn't even mean to do that. Well, let's get rid of that. I wanted to show the pyramids here. All right, so these beings, or I'm sorry, our ancient ancestors, okay, whether they be the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Greeks, the ancient Mayans, or whatnot, that one thing they all had in common from my research is that they studied the sky. They studied time itself. Time was a huge thing to all of these cultures, and they were really dead serious about studying time. So my question would be, why? Why this interest in time? It's not just like they're just huge historian buffs. Could be, yes, of course. But what if they're not just interested in the past, but what if they're recording time and keeping an accurate record of that time in order to predict and know the future? Because time is cyclical, right? Whatever has happened in the past is going to inevitably happen again in the future. So it kind of upsets me whenever we talk about these ancient cultures, and sometimes, man, we glorify them, we put them up on a pedestal, we give them credit for all of our wonderful sciences and math and things of that nature. But then when it comes to their other beliefs, like titans and giants and aliens and gods, and no, those are just children's stories. Those are bedtime stories. No, we don't. No, they were they didn't understand. You know what I mean? Like, come on, man. We can't have our cake and eat it too. We can't say, oh, well, I'll take some of your science over here, Greeks, but I'm going to leave your Titans over there. I'm not interested in talking about that. No, I'm sorry, but let's talk about all of it. Let's talk about every single part of every culture's history, why they felt it was important enough to include these strange and anomalous happenings in our past, and let's compare them all to see what they have in common, to see what the truth is, to rearrange and put back together the puzzle pieces of the greater, grander picture of life that is shattered, and all those pieces have fallen to our feet. I find some pieces, you find some pieces. Let's put our heads together and put our pieces together to see what fits, right? Hey, what's up, everybody in the chat, by the way? Welcome, Rue. I am Groot. All right, so where was I? All right, talking about the aliens here, right? So they started off in Ancient Aliens. They started off in this particular episode talking about the Mayan calendar. And the Mayans talked about, and all of these cultures had a very deep belief, not just in tracking time, but recording their interactions with the quote-unquote gods of the world, the angels of the world, the entities, whatever you want to call them, the aliens, basically, right? Now, let me stop right here. Let me tell you what I call them, because there's so many different names for them. First of all, I don't believe that the sky that we're looking at, with its dark blackness and white dots everywhere, I don't believe that that is anything but the covering to our world. That is the roof of our world. There is light shining through that roof, thankfully. But once we break through that roof, right? Once we leave this black house of death, we get into the whiteness of heaven, the glory of space, the brightness that we all know it's supposed to be, especially if it's just filled with all these suns and lights and stuff like that, right? So out there and in here is what I call collectively the fractalverse, right? The fractalverse is an infinite, ever looping example of as above, so below. It is an infinite reality that continues into and through itself, basically. Everything is reflected in everything else. And the beings that travel the fractalverse, the beings that are puddle jumpers, they go from one realm, wait for, hey, just got a donation. Semyaza tipped $1.99 through Super Chat. And just, he put a cool sticker in the chat, says good vibes, it looks like. Or it says vibes, but it's good vibes. Thanks a lot, man. And happy holidays to you guys. Hey, by the way, I should probably, I may do some sort of Christmas kind of holiday, end of the year, solstice special for the plasma apocalypse. So that's something I'm thinking about because we are coming up on that time of year. So I did want to throw that out there. Keep your eyes out for that. It's very important for me to share with all of you the reason why so many religions, so many cultures, all of these people celebrate this particular coldest time of the year when the sun is at its lowest, and why we have all these different stories telling the truth of what's going on with that. So keep your eyes out for that. Unlearn the Systems in the chat and says, JayDreamerZ, I call them me. They are me. I am them. There is no such thing as other. Our junk DNA holds all these beings' DNA. Yeah, that's kind of what the Fractalverse is. We are all one. We're all connected, right? It's interlooping. But here's the thing. In the Fractalverse, right, if we go upwards and outwards, The things out there tend to become much bigger and much larger. As we go downwards and inwards, the things inside become smaller and tinier, right? There's still life, which is equal on every scale, the further out you go or the further in you go. But going out and things getting larger, going in and things appearing smaller is only an illusion of the fractal verse. It continues on because it is not really infinite. It's just one. That's a little hard to explain, but some of you understand what I mean by that. So anyhow, they started talking about the Mayan calendar, and they said that on that date, not just would the world end, because the Mayans, the Greeks, the Egyptians, all of our ancient ancestors who were allegedly just stupid cavemen with great imaginations about titans and elves and beings and other stuff, but they also had some science, right? They knew about the cyclical resetting of our world and possibly other worlds as well, which I talk about being the plasma apocalypse, right? Now, allegedly their calendar began, the Mayan calendar began August 11th, 3114 BC, right? I believe that is very close. I'm not certain. And like I said, I haven't learned how to read the Mayan calendar myself. I have done the work myself, trying to figure out exactly at what point certain events had happened so that I could figure out where we are on that timeline. And therefore, when the plasma apocalypse or the worldwide reset will happen again, because I'm interested in knowing that, right? But the other point, aside from the world ending, right, was that they were expecting these otherworldly beings that I call the bipedal fantasoid Fractalverse Travelers, right? That's what they are. They travel the Fractalverse. They're Fractalverse Travelers. Some people call them astronauts. Some people call them aliens, whatever. For me, it's the Fractalverse, and they're traveling the Fractalverse. So that's what they're going. That's what they're doing. But they are also bipedal fantasoids. Fantasoids are those beings who leave the macrocosm, which is out there, where everything is much bigger, and they come into our microcosm, which is why the ancient gods, the ancient aliens, the angels, demons, elves, all these types of things, typically and originally were described as being giant. They're described as being huge compared to us. That's because they just came from an area in the macrocosm, right? For us, it's the macrocosm. For them, it was just normal. For them, it was the mesocosm, right? That's just their normal. But they came from a much larger world into a much smaller world. Now, like I talked about before in my Plasma Apocalypse videos, over time, they will conform to the size of the world that they are in. So that means everything gets smaller and smaller and smaller once it enters into our world, right? But the Mayans talked about the importance of their gods returning. Not just the Mayans, every single culture, every one of them. When you start researching and studying all of the world's religions, not just our favorite ones, and we compare them all to one another, we see some interesting similarities going on, right? One of those similarities is that those gods, those ancient beings, those bipedal fantasoids, those Fractalverse Travelers, that they come in, they stay a while, and then they all leave. They all take off, and they promise, we'll come back. You'll see us again, right? And one of the reasons for that, even though we don't see them for a few thousand years sometimes, right, is because they're immortal, essentially. Out there is heaven. Heaven is where beings live forever. There's no death in heaven, right? Space, heaven, whatever you want to call it. The Fractalverse up there, the macrocosm. The conditions out there for living promote a very long lifespan, unlike all the pressure that's crushing us down in this world, a world that is sealed off, a world that is a closed system, a world that is continuously losing oxygen and other elements that we need in order to survive as the life grows and grows and grows and sucks up all of the things that are needed for life to live, basically, right? So the Mayans talked about their gods returning. Their calendar began approximately 3114. Now that's also the approximate date around the same time as the flood of Noah, the last huge recorded catastrophe, basically, right? There were other ones recorded, but that was the last big one that probably gave us our oceans. Let's see. In the Chalam Balam, that is the book of the jaguar priests in in the Mayan culture. It says that at that time, the time that their calendar began, around the time of the Great Deluge, around the time of the Great Worldwide Flood, I'll get to the chat in just a second. It says that the road to the stars descended from the sky, and the 13 and 9 gods came to earth. Let me pause right there. Sorry for coughing. I'm going to jump in the chat real quick. Let's see here. Unlearn the System says, I 100% agree. London. Hey, what's up, London? London says, JayDreamerZ. Yeah, Jay, you should do a winter wonderful solstice special. I probably will. Honestly, I probably will, because I really need to stress the importance of why we celebrate Christmas and the other holidays that fall around the exact same time at the end of the year. It's really important for the, for understanding how the plasma apocalypse works and for our own survival. These traditions, although when I looked into religion and I started looking into all the religions of the world, I felt sort of betrayed at first because, the stories were not true. They were not 100% literal. But as I looked into all of the things that were related within those traditions across the board, I started to realize there's a reason these traditions are here, and it has to do with my safety. So definitely going to be talking about that. Unlearn the System says, here's a what if. What if it did happen in 2012 and we have just jumped dimensions? Okay, so let's play that game. If we jumped dimensions in 2012, this dimension looks just like the last one I was in. And the timeline is seamless. It's perfect. Okay, so I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying I have not seen any difference if I jumped into some other dimension or whatever. And I'm open to suggestions. I'm open to listening to, what you guys, if you have anything, that like you were affected by this dimensional shift or whatever, I'd love to hear more about it. Britt says, JayDreamerZ, maybe check out Kalaman's work on the Mayan calendar. Okay, I'll have to keep that in mind. I'm not sure who Kalaman is, but I'll try to keep that in mind. Hopi, hey, Hopi's in the chat and says, JayDreamerZ, olden days people walked around with scrolls and servants and scribes, wrote everything they did or thought, as with the prophets. It's no different today, but more accurate. Who's listening? That's also a really good point too. Speaking of scribes and the olden days people writing everything down, right? I'm not so sure there was a need for writing to even be implemented immediately after the plasma apocalypse, because I have this strong feeling that telepathic abilities are going to be strengthened amongst the world between animals and people and people and people, and probably even more than that. And so those of us who are scribes like myself, those of us who do know how to write and desire to write these things down for posterity, hey, we just got a new member, Dominic Izzo. Dominic Izzo is now a member. Welcome, Dominic. Let me just go ahead and welcome Dominic in the chat with some good vibe emojis. Welcome at Dominic. Izzo. I like that. That's a cool last name. All right, so let's get back into this. So we're talking about the Chalam Balam, the book of the Jaguar priests, right? And it says that the road to the stars descended from the sky. Okay, now they're talking about the time. Remember, this is the time of the great flood of the world. This is the time of the last, or the biggest last, worldwide cataclysm, worldwide catastrophe. And we have two things happening at once. We have the world is going nuts and there's this chaos and catastrophe. And then we have the arrival of this brand new race of beings, these alien beings, these gods or angels or fractalverse travelers, whatever you like to call them. So these things are happening at the exact same time. So for those people who are interested in blaming the aliens for our world going through these cataclysms, my question would be, why would you introduce a cataclysm happening concurrently with the time that you're arriving and landing in the world? Right? Doesn't seem wise. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I am saying maybe there's a different explanation for that. Maybe there is a cyclical cataclysm that happens, and when it happens, the windows of the heavens open up. and allow for transport between realms, allow for transportation and travel into our world or out of our world, right? And we're going to talk about that a little bit when we talk about Zecharia Sitchin and his writings as well. All right, so let's continue on. The road to the stars descended from the sky. That could be talking about a couple of different things if you look at it from the plasma apocalypse point of view. Either one, the giant hole at the North Star opening up as our world depressurizes and the sky blows open and the world depressurizes and everything gets sucked up and then phantazoids come into our world. The road from the sky could be the spiraling, all-seeing eye that opens up, the wheel in the sky, whatever, there's all these different names for it, right? It could be that. That could be the road to the stars. It could also be the literal sky opening up and cracking open. For example, the Milky Way. The Milky Way is called the Great Rift. A rift is a tear. A rift is a break. And I'm talking about the sky breaking open, right? Which is also another one of the prophecies of the eschatology of Islam. Islam has an eschatological prophecy that when the end comes, and that this has happened before, that man will see the moon split in half. And that most of mankind won't believe it. They'll say it's some sort of a trick, essentially. I'm paraphrasing, but they'll believe it's magic. They'll believe it's not real. So, could it be that the actual sky opens up and that because our sky, the barrier between us and the outer worlds, opens up, that it allows for beings to come in momentarily for a while and allows for these beings who are in this world, who are to the point where they have evolved or grown or whatever, and they're able to leave, that they're ready for their birth. They're ready for a new life. They're ready to birth out of this world and be born into heaven or be born into another place. Of course, they have to go through the waters above, right? Because you have to go through water in order to be born, traditionally. All right, so let's talk about some other stuff here. Angels return in Revelation. I'm reading my notes right now. Cosmic fights between good and evil. So, biblically speaking, which is one of my areas of expertise, but this also applies to every religion, from the Bhagavad Gita to the Vedas to the Quran to every single text I have ever looked at or heard of. We always have these otherworldly beings that have come into our world and they return at the end of time. Well, the end of time is just like the beginning of time, right? And we know at the beginning of time, according to the same writings, that these alien beings came into our world, introduced us to strange things that we didn't understand at the time, helped to sort of push our technology, push our mechanics, push our agriculture, push our astrology and astronomy and all these types of things, right? This is the same record found across the board, across the religions and across the cultures and across time. All right. Now, there's these cosmic fights of good and evil, okay? Listen, I don't know how interested they are, like, oh, I hate mankind, I want to just kill them all. Or I love mankind, I want to save them all. I think that maybe, if they're anything like me, they would probably have a priority, and their priority would be their relationship amongst themselves first, because they're all family. They're all coming from another place. They all have a similar agenda, a similar itinerary happening, right? And so, of course, there's going to be factions that develop between them. Obviously, one of the biggest factions that developed was the age-old story of Satan, or allegedly Lucifer, right? Two totally different words. We'll have to go into that another time. But this sort of devil-like being that at one point in time was on the same team. He was it was a Fractalverse Traveler that went from one world and down into our world, okay? And it talks about there was this war up in the heavens, just like in the Bhagavad Gita and other writings, especially the older Hindu writings, especially. It talks about these beings warring with each other up in the sky, right? Now, could those beings have access to advanced technology that we don't? Yes, of course. Could they have advanced weaponry amongst one another? Yes, of course. But let's get to the root of that. Why are they fighting each other? Let me go ahead and put this picture back up here. Sorry, I don't know. I'll just slide through some of these pictures right here. But why were they fighting one another, right? Why do they continue to fight one another? There is always going to be good and evil. As above, so below. If we're the below, right, they're going to reflect us. We have evil and good right down here, right? So will they, way up there. So will they, way down there. There's always going to be this element of good versus evil and those who waver back and forth in the land of neutrality. So it's no surprise that the angels or the demons fought each other, and the Azir and the Vanir fought one another, and all of these other classes of angelic beings or heavenly beings or celestial beings or aliens, whatever you want to call them, that they have problems with one another. And it's no surprise that when they came into our world and our world was sealed off after the plasma apocalypse, after the reset, that they're stuck in here, that they continue to war with one another. They continue to fight with one another. Not all of them do. Some of them followed the way of peace, the path of peace. We don't hear a lot about those ones except for on certain occasions, right? Lord Ravencarver is in the chat and says, JayDreamerZ, the Ford symbol has changed. Oh, he's talking, okay. You're talking about the Mandela effect, right? The Ford symbol changing. Well, I'd never been into cars that much, so I heard about the Ford symbol changing, but to me, the Berenstain Bears was the biggest one. I can definitely tell you that. Berenstain was Berenstein, basically, not Berenstain. That blows my mind. But let's talk about that one. We'll save that one for another time. I'll definitely be talking about the Mandela effect in the future. Dennis L says not Illuminati, but maybe Illuminati. Ooh, I see what you did there. Nice one. All right, so let me get back into the notes here. So here's what I am saying. I'm saying that these quote-unquote alien beings definitely exist, okay? There is ample and plenty of evidence across the board. Whatever name various people call them, everybody acknowledges, for the most part, their existence. Humanity has acknowledged their existence for quite some time. So let's not pretend like they don't exist, right? The thing is, they're going to return. The gods, the aliens, whatever you want to call it, they're literally going to come back when the plasma apocalypse happens during Ragnarok. Ragnarok is the great gathering of the huge war that happens because of the electromagnetic energy is fluctuating, it's charging, it's amping up, and it's going to be its most powerful right during the plasma apocalypse. And I've talked about that before too. So all the energy that is within us, because we're just reflecting the energy of the world, it's also going to be amped up and revved up. And people are going to be trying to hold on to power by going into these wars, essentially destroying themselves, which is exactly what happens to the energy before the polarity shift of our world, or the pole shift, whatever you want to call it. The energy gets its most powerful right at the very end before it destroys itself and welcomes in neutrality, followed by the next, or the new energy, basically. Right now, I believe it's a male energy, a masculine energy that will be replaced by a female energy. Dennis L says Mandela effect, but what about Mandela Hindu representation of the universe? Oh, mandala, the mandala. I'm not sure what you mean by what about it. So try to rephrase that and ask me more specifically, what do you mean, what about it? And I'll try to be more specific in my answer. But I'm glad that you know about the mandala. That's good too. I think we should all be studying the more ancient depictions of our world, our cosmology, and what's out there, and what's underneath us as well. All right, so we've got the gods returning, the prophecies of the gods, the aliens, the angels, whatever you want to call them. One day they're all going to come back. In Norse mythology, in Norse history, really, it's called Ragnarok. It's the great war right before the end, which is preceded by Fimbulvinter, which is the great winter that comes right before the end. We'll talk about that another time, though. Let's see. We also have our aliens to blame for worldwide destruction and cataclysms. Why do I have a vampire up there? I'm sorry. I stopped at a random picture. The reason I have a vampire up there, for the people who follow my channel, know vampires are aliens, okay? They are the immortals. They are the gods. They are the demons. They are all of these things. They are just a caricature version, a cartoonified version that has echoed its way over the millennia and found its way to us in story form. Those are your immortals. Now, what happens to the immortals when they get locked into this house of death, the black room, so to speak, right? I'm just going to put on a different picture here for a moment. I might as well go back to it. All right. Because I'm talking about them. Oh, excuse me. So what happens to the immortals when they get locked in? The pressure builds back up. The oxygen starts to deplete. Guess what? They start to die. They start to lose their immortality. Granted, they will live much longer than those beings who were already born into this environment, but they don't want to lose their immortality. That's why they come in, they puddle jump, they come in, they stay for a while, and then the very next time that sky opens, they blast off and they take off and they leave. They're only here for a little while, a short time. I mean, maybe they're visiting family that they left here from the last time. Maybe they're explorers. Maybe they're here on a mission. Maybe they're here to take over. Who knows, right? But I do know this. They don't stay. If they do stay, they have to find an alternative way to extend their lifespans. Enter vampires. Okay? That's why vampires are already immortal. They don't die. They don't have to go around. You know, that's the only thing that basically, according to the story, keeps them living. Even though they'll still live, they'll just have a really crappy existence if they don't suck blood. So these are your elite. These are your Illuminati. These are the ones who are literally blood related to those bipedal phantazoids, at least one faction of them who came down, who wanted to extend their immortality. They tried to find other ways to do it. And this is where you have alien abductions, right? They're abducting people, just like the vampires. That's their MO. They abduct people, right? They snatch people right out of the streets in the middle of the night and they just take them and do whatever they want. Typically, what they're doing is they're trying to extend their lifespans, right? Because they don't look at people as unique as some of us look at people, right? And some people are out there going, how could they do that? How could aliens? That's not right. That's not moral. Well, come on, let's be fair. How do we treat animals? How do we treat plants? How do we treat inferior life forms right now in our world, right? So why should we basically like kind of be hypocritical in our mode of thought and say, how dare you do that? We do this exact same thing. Okay. Collectively, we do that, right? Mankind does that, I should say. All right. So are aliens to blame for worldwide destruction and cataclysms? I don't think so. If anything, I think there's a lot of evidence that in my research supports the idea that these ancient aliens and beings were trying to control the population and other elements. Once they came in here and they got stuck in here, they understand how the world works. They understand how this system and this cosmology works. They understand the electromagnetics involved. They understand the resets that happen, the cataclysms. And sometimes I think that they're trying to do damage control, because here's what happens. If you go let's start with something small. If you go a small amount of time between worldwide resets, right? Between the sky opening up, the world depressurizing, all the other stuff that's involved with that, then the severity of it will be smaller. But if you go a long time between resets, now the severity is going to be huge. And possibly could wipe them out, take them out, regardless of their technology. All right, so I believe that a lot of them are actually trying to live for a long time, and I don't believe that they want to cause a lot of cataclysms that could hurt them and their families that they have established here on this world as well. Although I know, and we all know, that yes, they're trying to protect their families and they've built bunkers and all this stuff, right? But ultimately, would you really want to unleash a cataclysm upon the house where your family lives? Like, even though you've made precautions, I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Possibly not though. I just think that they have a better understanding of how these cycles work. And that's why we always see them coming in during those cycles when the door opens, and they stay when the door closes, basically, right? Now that's not to say that they don't know how to manipulate certain smaller elements within this world, like weather modification, right? We know how to do that. We probably learned it from them. Triggering earthquakes or things like that. Yes, on a smaller scale, those types of things are achievable, right? If they're willing to risk that. Let's see here. Dennis L says, Mandela Della in Russian means business. so work of man. Nice, cool. He also says Mandela and mandala are one letter apart. Yes, that's true too. All right, so let's see here. Next thing, seeing bright lights in the sky. Oh, I already talked about that one. I sort of touched on that to begin with, right? I wish I could make this. Oh, slideshow. Can I just do that? Let's see if I can make it, put it on slideshow. Let's do 7 seconds per. Cool. I didn't know I could do that. Well, I learned something new, didn't I? All right. Why control the population? To keep the balance, to prolong the pack, the plasma apocalypse cycle. They want to prolong that, okay? Either that, or perhaps sometimes maybe they might want to trigger it, not to kill people. I mean, that's always a possibility, but maybe they want to trigger it because they know triggering it will allow them access to escape the windows of heaven, the portals in the sky, or the portals in the firmament, whatever you want to call it. They will open up and they'll be able to travel through and continue on, right? All right, let me go back to my notes here for just a quick second. All right, so that's why they want to control the population. For example, the Georgia Guidestones, okay? You can do a quick Google search, just search for images on Google and type in Georgia Guidestones, right? In Georgia, there are these huge megaliths that were erected by unknown people, right? An unknown group. And essentially, they have like 10 different languages, I believe, written on each one of these stones. Or I'm sorry, each one of these stones has its own individual language. And there's 10 different languages. And each one of these languages basically gives a sort of commandment to humanity in Georgia, in the middle of nowhere, for some weird, strange reason. So here's the deal with that. A lot of people, including myself, when I first heard about this, are like, that's Illuminati, that's evil. Why? Because of the first commandment on there. The very first commandment on the Georgia Guidestones says, keep the world's population under 500 million, or I forgot what it was. You know what? I'm going to look it up real quick. Let's check it out. Let's do some screen sharing. I'm going to take this slideshow down for a quick second here. All right. Hey, I got a donation again. I got a donation from Connor Fitzpatrick. Connor Fitzpatrick donated and actually bought a cool super chat sticker of a bear riding a rocket. You know what? That's some great support right there, and I really appreciate it, especially during the holidays when I'm spending a lot of money on bills and presents and, visiting family and all this stuff. So thank you, Connor Fitzpatrick. And, man, I really appreciate it, and so does the Good Vibe Tribe. Oh, Dennis L. says, JayDreamerZ, I feel it's already 500 million. Well, I don't know. I haven't gone around and counted everybody myself, right? So I just kind of have to go with the status quo for the meantime, okay? I can tell you, I can't tell you a whole bunch. It seems like there's a lot of people in the world. That's what I'm going to say. How many that is, the number, I have no idea. I know I grew up in Southern California, and man, you could just go to the beach on any given hot day and you could see about 500 million people. There's a lot, okay? I'm just kidding. But anyway, let me bring up some screen sharing, and we're going to actually check out. Oh, that's the wrong screen right there. Let me type in Georgia Guidestones real quick. Boom. Popped right up. All right, we're going to go to images. I'm going to try to find a good one here and put it back up on the screen behind me. There we go. All right, that should do the trick. All right, so let's find a good one here. Georgia Guidestones. Oh, check that out. They've got like a cuneiform or something up there. What is that? I didn't realize they had writing on the top block. That's pretty cool. All right, what is this one? This one's okay. This one's okay, but it's readable, so we'll check this one out real quick. Let me go ahead and just make this a little bigger. Uno momento. One sec here. I'm going to make this nice and big so we can all be on the same page and we can all read it at the same time. Okay, so as you can see, we'll make it a tiny bit bigger. Might as well make it huge. All right, there we go. All right, so here's the Georgia Guidestones over here, right? First thing, and this is what messed me up. This is what had me going, screw that. They're trying to kill everybody, right? First thing says, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Thanks again, Connor, by the way. I appreciate it a lot, really. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. So here's what most people do, including myself when I first heard about this. I said, well, the 500 million, there's like 7 billion people on the planet right now, right? This was my mindset a few years back, right? So I immediately thought to myself, whoever put these rocks up in the middle of nowhere in Georgia intends on killing and massively murdering most of the inhabitants of our world. I had some time to think about that since then, and I'm not so sure I agree with myself anymore, right? Especially as I start reading the rest of these, right? But listen to what it says. In perpetual balance with nature. What does that mean? That means that whoever had access to this, which is a monument in and of itself, okay? There's a lot happening with the Georgia Guidestones as far as where they're placed and where their alignments and all the languages and all of that. It took a lot of stuff to make this happen. So, in perpetual balance with nature, we have to think about this. We live in an electromagnetic fractalverse or universe, however you want to see it. And every time a human is born into this world, more energy is entering into this sealed off world, adding more pressure to the sealed off world. And it's adding another being that's going to consume more resources from a sealed off world, right? So those beings who came before us seem to understand that it's not good to have a huge population like that in a small living space, in a small area, which our world is, relatively speaking, kind of small, okay? I know some people may agree or disagree with that, but that's the whole reason why we have this cyclical plasma apocalypse, is because the pressure builds up in our world and the energy builds up in our world, and it needs to be released. It needs to be cleaned out, right? So one of the things that they try to do is they try to keep the population low, because not only will more babies brought into this world turn into more people exponentially because we multiply like rabbits, right? But it's going to add more things to the world and accelerate the advancing of our technology, our pollution, all of the things that happen, our wars, all of the negative emotions and stuff, especially because of what this world is here for. It's a training ground, essentially, and there needs to be a negative energy here. There needs to be that for us to learn from it, basically, and to grow and develop. But let's check out the rest of these. Maintain humanity under 500 million in balance with nature. That's a good thing. I believe it's good to be balanced with nature and just to be balanced in general. The middle path, right? Guide reproduction wisely. Improving fitness and diversity. So I'm not going to read all these because I didn't want this to be all about the Georgia Guidestones. But basically, these are all good. I see these very, very good, okay? I love the Georgia Guidestones. I'm glad that they're here. And the reason that they're out in the middle of nowhere in Georgia, of all places, is because people who understand how this cyclical reset works, those alien beings who have traveled the fractalverse and jumped from puddle to puddle, they have seen how things work in other places as well. And they know that that these are good laws. This is good to have in order to promote a long and healthy life. Hey, I just got another donation from Kvoth. Kvoth donated and said, "Hey Jay, I heard it was said that during these times, places in the tropics are the safest. Africa, South America, etc. Can you recommend a few locations that you know of? I'm in Sydney, Australia, so I'm trying to figure out if I gotta leave." Okay, that's a fair question to ask. Basically, Kvoth is asking, and thank you so much for your donation too, Kvoth. I appreciate it. My family appreciates it, and my gas tank appreciates it, so thank you. Where's the safest place, right? Well, I'm going to tell you like I tell everybody, because I want to make sure I stress this. The safest place, first and foremost, the first thing you got to be concerned about is your heart, your energy. Everything is electromagnetic, okay? The plasma and all that stuff happens because it's going to rid and clean out this world. It's a spring cleaning. It's going to get rid of all a lot of, I should say, a lot of the negative vibrations and bad guys of the world, okay? So that's the first place you need to look, is in your heart, inside of yourself, right? Change your vibe. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, right? As far as physically, I just want to help you out because you definitely donated and I appreciate it. So there is no guarantee of safe places at all, but I'm going to tell you this. The closer you live to the North Pole without actually going into the North Pole and into the inner Earth, the more difficult life is going to be for you. Okay. So people around the Arctic Circle, they're going to have to deal with super cold air coming down and basically creating glaciers and throwing them into an ice age and stuff like that. People just below that, they're going to have to worry about the winds and stuff. The further out you go, I believe so far, probably the better it is, but it depends on your location. Australia is a big old island surrounded by the oceans. So here's the thing about that. There's going to be earthquakes, which are going to jostle the waters around Australia. Okay. But here's the good news for you. There will be a neutral point in the plasma apocalypse where there will be essentially zero gravity for a little while. And those winds are going to be blowing around. So the oceans are basically going to float up into the air, and a lot of them are going to get sucked out of our world or get trapped up towards the top barrier. So I wouldn't worry about the oceans too much, but it is a possibility. If you're in Australia, I would say your best bet is to find some good, solid bedrock. And I know that there's some good, solid bedrock in Australia. That's why it even exists in the first place. Find some good, solid bedrock. Look into getting yourself some masks, right? Some masks so that you can filter out the poisons that are going to be in the air. There's going to be a huge influx of not just oxygen, but nitrous oxide. Definitely do some research on nitrous oxide and see how that affects people. And dust and stuff like that. So get a gas mask. Try to find yourself a good, solid cave and, maybe tie yourself to like just inside the entrance of that cave. I don't know how deep I would go into a cave, honestly. And you don't have to be in a cave to survive at all, really. But you don't want to get sucked up. You just want to think about the certain elements that happen during the plasma apocalypse. So let me see. Let me go back to your question here. You're basically asking what areas in the world are safe. Various places in the world are safe. For example, the place where I live right now, Colorado Springs, on the lee side of Pikes Peak, that's keeping me safe from the winds as they travel from the west to the east. Hopefully, that's the direction that they go in. I'm hoping, because that's where I live, right? But I believe that's why it looks like that, because the wind pushed everything, made all these mountains. The plasma pulls the mud up into the sky, makes mountains, etc. Right? The wind basically goes over those mountains, and those people who live just on the other side of that mountain are safer from those supersonic winds. And then those winds reach out and you have plains. That's why you have plains on the other sides of these huge mountain ranges, because those huge cataclysmic winds are going over the mountain ranges, missing those small areas just on the foothills, and then they're pushing everything out and away out in the plains. Let's see, a few locations. I don't know of any locations in Australia. I'm not very familiar with Australia. I want to highly recommend for all of you, if you're interested in surviving the plasma apocalypse, first, look inside. Second, research your geography and your particular areas locally. Find out what plants grow that are edible, what plants grow that are poisonous, where cave systems exist. Where the mountains are, where the bedrock is, what the soil looks like around you. Look for trees around your house that look like they're deeply rooted into the ground, something you can maybe tie yourself to. These are things that I do for myself and my family. And in the end, we're basically going to just have like a backpack each, if that, full of things that we need, like a little bug out bag, even though we're not going to really bug out, okay? We're going to bug out after everybody gets sucked up into the sky and after the winds die down and stuff. Then we'll go out into the mountains and, go look for a new home to live in or whatnot. I hope that helps to answer your question. And from my family to yours, thank you very much for the donation and happy holidays. Let's see. Dennis L says, Australia is the Antarctic Circle. Yes. Okay. So Australia is going to be a little bit closer to the dome. So if the dome's going to be breaking, keep your eye out in the sky. Watch out for pieces that are falling down and stuff. However, I don't think the entire dome is going to break. I think that it's going to fracture. I think it's going to split. I think first it's going to blow a hole in the top as the world depressurizes. And then as the earth itself begins to grow and there's worldwide earthquakes, right? I think that the dome is possibly just going to split right in half and give us another Milky Way, essentially. And it'll seal itself back up after a time. But Unlearn the System says, JayDreamer is probably the Great Dividing Range, East Coast, Australia. Hey, that's good. So if you're in the chat and you have any advice for people who leave super chats who are not members of the Good Vibe Tribe, help them out. I appreciate that. Thanks a lot, Unlearn the System. Okay, so let me get back into this. Let's see here. We were talking about aliens and their association with the cyclical ends of the world. I'll go ahead and throw up some pictures here again. Let's see, where were we with these pictures? What's a good alien picture? Oh, I had a little slideshow. That's right, I forgot. Let's do that. All right, cool. We'll just leave it on that. These are actually Aboriginal drawings of aliens in Australia, believe it or not. And they always look like that. That's the same phantazoid, pearlescent, ivory-skinned kind of a color. That's the color of space, and that's the color of beings from space. In general, according to my research, right? So that's why these ancient cultures, that's why they're always painting their faces that pure white color, not Caucasian. I mean, look at me and look at that guy, right? Like I'm not white like that. I'm Caucasian, essentially, right? I'm pigmented, but the phantazoids, they're white. They're white and probably have a shimmery, shiny rainbow kind of color to them as well. So let's see here. We talked about why do the aliens want to control the population. We talked about why aliens abduct people, right? And of course, this is only certain factions, okay? Just like we have, you wouldn't want, let's say that I traveled out and I became a Fractalverse Traveler and I left, which I intend to be, by the way, and I left this world one of these days, right? And let me tell you what my plan is. I'm going to tell you me and Jenny's plan. This is our plan, okay? This is my plan. And I asked Jenny if she wants to be a part of it. She said yes. So here's my plan. My plan is survive this upcoming plasma apocalyptic event, gain my own immortality for a while I have and enjoy superpowers of a sort and an extended life. I will be devoting myself to figuring out how to get out the next time. And I'm going to take my family with me and travel the Fractalverse. So that's my plan. So all right, let me go back to this. Let's see. Why control the population? Oh, Zechariah Sitchin. We've got to mention Zechariah Sitchin. If you want more information about the Anunnaki, the ancient gods, the aliens, the Fractalverse Travelers, a great source that I found is Zechariah Sitchin's translations of the clay tablets that were found in a library, a buried library underground. Why is the library buried underground? Because of cataclysms that come and bury everything underground, basically, right? But they unearthed this library in ancient Nineveh in modern-day Iraq, and it had thousands upon thousands of clay tablets written in cuneiform writing that were basically a history of the world. And in that history of the world, when we read it today, it reads like mythology. It reads like fantasy. But, I mean, come on, like, This is an underground buried library of clay tablets that probably took a very, very long time, a huge undertaking to record so much information. Why in the world would people record what sounds like movie plots and fantasy and fiction and stuff that's essentially considered not real if it wasn't? Of course, the answer is it's real. It was real history. It really did happen. And they recorded it and they wrote it down and they passed it on and we found it. And now we collectively discount it, right? We basically talk about, like, we really don't want to talk about it, basically. But they did find this, including another contemporary of the biblical account and many other religious accounts of the creation of us and the introduction of the gods into our world and how we have a relationship with them because we're literally related to them. Some of us are related to them in some ways. Some of us are related to them in other ways. For example, white people, right? Caucasians. We're clearly related to them a little more as far as the pigment goes, right? Because the phantazoids, vampires, Vulcans, whatever you want to call them, they're always white. They're always that pearlescent, shining, shimmering, not Caucasian, very ivory white skin, right? We are a little more towards that in the spectrum. Asian people, they have the genetic similarity of having dragon eyes, right? Their eyes literally are a genetic passing down from the gods to them from the dragon gods that they all worship, which are basically phantazoids who came into this realm, right? All right. So, yes, Zecharia Sitchin went into huge detail about, I recommend starting off his book series with maybe the 12th planet. You could start with the 12th planet. Genesis Revisited is where I started, and it's a great, great introduction to his whole series. But yeah, the 12th planet series, he talks about the Anunnaki, he talks about Nibiru. Now, you got to read it with a grain of salt because he reads it and interprets the language through his own experience, through his own research, just as I interpreted his research that he shared through my own experience and my own perspective as well. Okay, cool. All right, so let me go on here. Oh, so according to Zecharia Sitchin, the Anunnaki, these guys right here, they came down and basically manipulated the natives that were living here at the time. Each one of these realms has its own natives in it. Now, native doesn't mean that they were always there. It just means that they are a culture that was all born there. Okay. And all of the people who are no longer native are no longer there. So now it's just full of people who were continuously born in that realm. Just like the Anunnaki, they came down in from other realms, right? From the heavens to earth, they came. They mated with the natives who were already here, and they created their own half-bloods and family lines and stuff like that, right? Well, they ended up leaving. Some of them, sometimes they make the choice to stay. Sometimes love wins the day and they're like, man, I can't leave my family. And they stay here, believe it or not. And that means they have to die or find another way, an alternative way of living. But basically, according to Sitchin, they manipulated the native DNA of the inhabitants who were here and helped to sort of boost the human race into a different direction and created slaves out of us. So let's think about this. Let's put the shoe on the other foot. What if you had the ability to leave this world during the plasma apocalypse, become a fractalverse traveler, enter into some other world as their heavens are opened, right? AKA the moon, when the moon cracks in half. All those people of Islam, you know what I'm talking about. The moon's going to crack in half, right? That means that it's open. That means you can now go inside of the moon and go check out, go live there basically. But let's say you were able to do that. You came to another world where because of your conditions of living on this world, you're seen as a superhero. You're seen as being way stronger than the natives of that world. Maybe they have a weaker gravitational pull. Maybe there's other factors involved. But you're way bigger and you're way stronger, right? What would you do? How are you going to interact with the natives of that world, especially if they look kind of like you do, but way smaller and a little stranger, right? Where are you going to live? How are you going to help out? What are you going to teach? And what can they offer you in return for your services in helping them to rebuild their world? Would you accept it if some of them got together and said, hey, we'd like to build you a big giant house because you're pretty big and you need a real big house to live in? Would you accept that? Would you get tired of the thousands upon thousands of these individual natives coming to you for all the answers because they heard, wow, that being is immortal and that being has lived for a very long time and accumulated a lot of information. Basically, you're omnipotent in comparison. And they know that. So they start flocking to you by the thousands, taking up all of your time. And all of the time of your family. And now you have to deal with bickering. And now you have to deal with infighting. And now you have to deal with all the petty little problems. And you only want to talk about something bigger and better and the things you're interested in instead of having your entire day taken up by all these native inhabitants. So what would you do? Would you possibly take one of those inhabitants who's well respected in their community and appoint them king? or as high counselor and tell all the inhabitants, look, stop coming to me. You can go to my intermediary, talk to them, and if it's too hard for them, they'll come and talk to me. It sounds like something that might work, doesn't it? Let me go ahead and throw up another slideshow as we go into the little second half of our show here. I'm going to pull up some different pictures right now. Let's see. Let's pull up the elves. No, I already had the elves up there. Let's pull up albino gods. Same thing. Fractalverse Travelers. No. I had that one up already. Let's go to the elves. Yes. Man, I gotta get some more pictures here. All right, I'm just gonna put up some images of the elves here because the elves are the exact same. Well, where'd they go? Oh, okay. There we go. All right, cool. So I'm gonna put this on slideshow real quick. That way I don't have to keep clicking through the pictures. All right, so let's move on to something else here. So we talk about Zecharia Sitchin. We talk about the slave race of humanity. We enslave ourselves, okay? We are the ones going to these gods, to these giants, to these otherworldly beings, to these angels, to these demons, whatever you want to call them, the jinn, the Jedi, they're all the same. We're the ones going to them and saying, help. I just woke up in the post-apocalyptic world and my memory's been wiped and I don't know how to survive and everything's all messed up. Some of these beings may have had compassion on us and said, I would be more than willing to help you. But think about this. What are their rules? What are their moral standards? Are they allowed to show themselves to us? Are they allowed to share their technology with us? If we look at sci-fi, right, which I see things like this. For example, a lot of our past has been obliterated. It's been forgotten, right? We know that we have a hidden history, a forgotten history of our past collectively as humanity, right? So fantasy is a conduit with which we can look back through and get an idea of what the past was like. That's fantasy. Sci-fi is a conduit that we use to look forward into our future, to get an idea of what the future is going to look like, right? These are some tools that we still have available to us. Where was I? All right. Anyways, let me just go a little bit forward here. Okay. So I totally lost my train of thought. I'm sorry about that. All right. Also the bad ones, the vampire class, the ones that are going around and don't have your best interest at heart, the ones that are abducting people and, eating their blood or using their plasma or whatever it is that they're doing to try to extend their lifespans. Those, because of their color, those are the killer clowns from outer space, as I affectionately call them, right? That's why Pennywise is a killer clown. That's why Beetlejuice is bad. That's why all these killer clowns, okay, that's why they're that color and that's why they are basically seen as the bad guys. Okay, so around 3,000 years ago, approximately BC, Stonehenge was created. The Great Pyramids were created. There was a lot of ancient, huge, megalithic monuments that were created around 3,000 years ago, around the exact same time that these godlike beings, these bipedal phantazoid fractalverse travelers came into our world, right? And we automatically, and on Ancient Aliens, they automatically assume we must have had the help of the gods, right? Possibly. Okay. Yes. Maybe they knew how to stack rocks on top of each other. I mean, they do have super advanced technology, so I don't want to second guess their rock stacking abilities, right? So yeah, maybe the gods taught us how to stack rocks on top of each other. Possibly. Okay, I know they're big, I know they're heavy, I get it, but it seems overly simplified a little bit. Like we couldn't figure out how to stack rocks on top of each other. But here's the other thing. The conditions of our world change. After the plasma apocalypse, we will essentially have people who have superhuman strength. And we'll have a weakened gravitational pull, I believe. That's my own theory there. And if that's the case, and if the whole world is basically liquefied and turned into quicksand and mud and clay and stuff, it's not too far of a leap to assume that those rocks and those megalithic structures weren't always solid, dense, heavy objects, that they were easily formed, easily moved around by anybody, right? And a lot of times we made these structures for the gods as a gift because we appreciated that they were sharing certain knowledge and we appreciated they were helping us to rebuild our society and rebuild our world, right? But I also believe that they have something like in Star Trek, a prime directive. And that prime directive basically says when you travel the fractalverse and you go down into a new realm, you are not to go in there and be the gods of the realm. You're not to go in there and you're not to share all of the technology. You're not to teach them all the wonders of the fractalverse and reality and all of that stuff. You're not even to tell them about your origins. They might not even be allowed. They don't even want people drawing a picture of them. They don't want their likeness to be molded, imaged, copied, photographed, none of that stuff. And it seems that there may be some sort of celestial rules involved with the interactions that the quote-unquote aliens have with humanity. It's not that the aliens are just like, you know, they're hiding and they're afraid of humanity and this and that. I don't know about that. I mean, I don't know if why would they be afraid? Like, getting rid of fear is one of the biggest obstacles to leaving this world. So I'm not sure about that. But I do believe in the Star Trek version of the Prime Directive. And the Prime Directive says when you go into one of these underdeveloped worlds, you're not to go in there and introduce all of your technology just to boost their world so that you can be more comfortable or so that you can try to manipulate that particular world or be the god of that particular world. And it seems like whatever rules exist up there celestially, right, out there in space or whatever you want to call it, that they're pretty serious and probably punishable by death in some cases, right? But as we talked about, there are factions and there are groups that break off and branch off from one another and they fight with each other, etc., and so on and so forth. All right. We talked about the Georgia Guidestones. Also, they're a type of Rosetta Stone as well, being that there's 10 different languages and they all say the same thing, right? Somebody's looking out for the future survivors of this world. I don't think they put that there and wasted all that time and energy just to mislead us, just to try to manipulate us from the past or not. I don't think so. You know what I mean? I appreciate it. Whoever put that up there, hey, good on you. I appreciate it. And there's a reason it's written in stone. Okay. There's a reason that certain things are passed on in the rocks because the rocks survive. How do they survive? Plasma comes in, it destroys our mechanics, it destroys our electricity, it destroys all of our electronics and stuff like that. It petrifies stuff, right? But the rocks, it just hardens the rocks. It just bakes them. And they're still rocks, basically. So if you write into the rock, your writing can possibly stand the test of time for quite some time. And if it's water that comes in, right? It's still a rock. Still, look at that, there's Dracula up there. All right, let's talk about alien abductions, immortals trying to keep their immortality. I already kind of mentioned that. Killer clowns from outer space versus the Lightworkers, okay? So I do want to acknowledge there is a bad side to it. There's the bad aliens. There's the bad faction, okay? You have the Azir and the Vanir. Not only that, but think about this. Let's say that I survive the plasma apocalypse, which that's my goal. All right, so let's say that that's also my intuition, okay? It's just like, my intuition sometimes overrides my own goals and hopes and stuff. Like I feel like I'm going to survive. All right. So let's say that I survive. Okay. And it's 10 years after the plasma apocalypse. I grew up in the conditions of strengthening my body under this huge pressure that exists in this world, under this strong weight. Because like I said, the electromagnetics of our world, I believe, gets stronger and stronger, which means the gravitational pull probably gets stronger and stronger, which means your muscles get stronger and stronger, right? So the plasma apocalypse happens, the world depressurizes, the energy is released and it sort of starts over and it has to build back up again, which means that gravity, or whatever you'd like to call it, is weaker to start off with, right? So what does that mean? That means I'm a superhero. That means that I am very, very super strong and my lifespan is extended, basically, right? Oh, don't lose my train of thought. All right, so say I go into that world, right? I totally forgot where I was going. Dang it. I saw something that distracted me and I totally forgot. All right. So I'm going to continue with the story. Say I go into that world. I get superhuman strength. What was I talking about? This happens to me from time to time, believe it or not. I have so much stuff I want to talk about and so many rabbit holes to go down. I always distract myself. Longle, hey, welcome, Longle. All right, so I go into the plasma apocalypse. I get super strong and stuff like that. I forgot where I was going. I'm sorry. I can't even remember where I was going. I'm a person, okay? And this is not scripted. I have notes, but it's not scripted. Let's see here. Let me just keep on talking. It'll probably come back to me. Okay, that's right. I was talking about the Lightworkers. Oh, I remember where I was going. Okay, good. All right, so I remember where I was going with all of this. All right, so here's where I'm going. The factions. Let's say I survive. I essentially become a superhero, just like the ones we see in the movies, okay? Now, enter the bipedal fantasoid giants, aka the gods or whatnot, right? They're coming from the macrocosm. They're much bigger than I am. Now, there's going to be this interesting relationship between the superheroes of this world, aka myself and other survivors, and the other superheroes who entered into this world, the native ones, the ones who are considered the good-looking ones, right? Which I believe is going to be the people of the earth are going to be the good-looking ones. I don't know. Maybe I'm biased. I don't know. But there was always the Azir and the Vanir. The Vanir were the beautiful ones. That's literally what it means. They are the very pretty ones, the ones that were very beautiful. Now, the reason I say that the humans are the Vanir or the beautiful ones, possibly the survivors of the last reset, that's because, biblically speaking, at the very least, it talks about in Genesis chapter 6, the sons of God, aka the aliens or the whatever, the angels, whatever you want to call them, they came down into our world and they said, wow, the sons of man, aka the natives of this world, are beautiful to behold. They're very pretty. They're very good looking. And they took wives from whoever they chose, right? They started their own families. So that's why I say that the survivors going into it are essentially going to become the new Vanir. The Azir are those from the air coming down from above. And then we've got this sort of fight between superpowered beings, right? The ones from the macrocosm who are gigantic and us who are very tiny in comparison, but very strong because of where we just came from. All right. Anyway, there's that interesting thought to share with everyone. Do we have the right to be informed? Hold on. I want to see if the slideshow is continuing on here. Oh, yeah, it is. Let's do a cool effect. There we go. All right. So do we have the right to be informed? No, I don't like that effect. That one's weird looking. Let's do slides. See what that does. I have to wait a few seconds. Hold on. Oh, okay. I like that. All right, cool. Do we have the right to be informed, right? So let's just say this. Let's just say that some Fractalverse travelers who are essentially immortal because of their surroundings and, other factors like that. They come into our world. They've lived a couple thousand years. They have accumulated a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, a lot of information. Essentially, they are omnipotent in comparison to us, right? Do we have the right to look at them and say, you need to tell us everything? Is that our right? Is that our right to know what they know, to know all of the secrets? Is that our right simply because we say, oh, I acknowledge that secrets exist. I demand to know them all. Are we ready for that? You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. I'm a very curious person and there's a lot of stuff that I want to know, but I need to be balanced. I need to take the middle path and I need to trust that I will know those things all in good time. When it is the right time for me to know it, life will hand it to me. Maybe they understand some higher teachings like that out there where they come from, and they take those higher teachings when they come down into a lower base house of living, whatever you want to call it, right? Do we have that right to be informed, or do we have the right to remain ignorant? Let's say we did have the right to remain ignorant. Let's say the aliens didn't just come down here with loudspeakers and say, attention, citizens of Earth. We will now tell you the secret to everything, right? Like, that would be kind of infringing upon your right to be ignorant, your right to be blissfully unaware of whatever it is, your right to find those things on your own, in your own time. There are other things, higher ways that are happening all around us. Sometimes I just feel like I need to take a step back and be patient. I need to look inward for these things instead of looking outward for them, right? Find them on the inside and they'll just be reflected to you on the outside. I promise you that. All right, so that was pretty much it. Those are all of my notes that I had that I wanted to talk about. Hey, Zen Ottman, what's up, dude? Thanks for sending people to my channel from your channel. Everybody go check out Zen Ottman's channel. I don't really know about your channel a lot. I'm just going to be honest. I've popped in from time to time. But I do appreciate that you guys are sending people my way. Especially since I started memberships. Like, the second I started memberships, dude, my subscribers, I was getting like 1,000 subscribers like every few weeks, you know, and I don't know how much it was. It was a lot. My channel was really growing really fast and I was really excited about it. But then I did the membership thing and all of a sudden it all slammed on the brakes. YouTube's been going nuts with all these weird algorithms and rules and stuff that they're doing. So I've never asked anybody to share my videos or anything, but hey, all of you who do, I just want to say it means a lot to me. I appreciate it. It helps me to make more money so that I can support my family and continue to do this instead of going out and getting another job and stuff and basically quitting this. I would still write my book, which I'm doing right now. I would still write my book, but I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing, basically. So I appreciate it. Hey, Connor Fitzpatrick. I love saying that. I love saying you guys' name in accents, even if you're not from that area. Connor Fitzpatrick. I'll say it in more of my American accent. Connor Fitzpatrick says, gave me a donation. Thank you. Oh, hold on. Let me get rid of slideshow. It should pop up. There we go. Connor Fitzpatrick says, 10 Owls Peak Owa Tech. Hard light, life support. Whoa. Let me read this again. Peak OWA. Tech Hard Light, Life Support, Venturi, Cold F Pale, Man H Doc, Manic C Supermans, P Sun, Frequent Electronic Meta Maya, Merge. Time is not linear. I understand that part. Time is not linear through portals, mediums, phones across time information in advances. I'm understanding some of that. I'm just going to be super transparent. I don't get a lot of what you're saying right now because it's kind of choppy and you're probably from another country, which I understand. So let me see if I could read into this a little bit. Oh, he or she is talking about the electronic time, how time works and it's not linear through the portals. That's something I have touched on in the past. Time here works a lot differently than time up there. Especially if you stop aging, if you stop becoming decrepit and your body's falling apart or getting fat or getting old or getting wrinkled and, basically starting to die. This is a house of death. It's very much, death is accelerated in this place. So yeah, when you go out there, time is a lot different to an immortal. Time is a lot different to larger beings than it is for smaller beings. So I hear you on that one. That's up there in the macrocosm. So, for example, if you were to leave this world, shoot right through the roof of this world, go out into the fractalverse, and then you come back 10 years later, this world has been on fast forward while you were gone. Okay? You will come back. For you, might be 10 years later, but for the inhabitants of this world, it has been like 10,000 years later. Same thing if you go down into the microcosm. Right? We can look down into the microscopic life of our own world and we can say, oh yeah, these cells, they live and they die in the matter of a few days, like life is very small. The fruit fly only lives for like a week or whatever. To those beings, they're not living for a few days. They're not living for a week or whatever. They have lived an entire long life. And they look up at you and you're moving around in like slow motion. You're not getting older. If you leave your house, the fruit fly on your windowsill or door that watches you leave will one day tell its offspring the story of the gods who left and promised to return from the grocery store. You know what I mean? So I hear you on that. I do. And also, he was kind of mentioning the medium of phones across time information. So I don't understand exactly what that's about, but I do talk about the circuits of time. That's kind of what I talk about. It's from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. But basically, we have plasma conduits that connect all the stuff out there. Every world is connected by the transfer of information, by vibration, by light, by plasma, basically, essentially, right? And it's just like the cell exchanging information between other cells in the brain through the synapses and through the nerves and stuff, right? Same thing. And that's why in the movies, a lot of times people have time traveling devices that are usually something like a telephone, or they can teleport through the telephone. They can go into other worlds through their wiring or through the internet, like Ralph Breaks the Internet, all that type of stuff. That's all what is literally happening in the macrocosm above us. And because it's a fractal verse, in the microcosm inside of us. Thank you. Hey, thanks for the donation. I really appreciate it. Honestly, like it's the best time of the year for me for donations because we're poor. We're poor. So I'm being honest. Like it means a lot and it helps me. I really appreciate it. So thank you. And it's a nice little gift. I appreciate it. All right. Vegan Demon is one of the newest members in the chat and says there's a new movie about a scientist who goes in a cave and time passes much slower underground. See, that's the other thing too. Different conditions exist within our world, under our world, in the literal underworld, right? There's a movie called Underworld, which reflects all of the things that I talk about, right? People turning into animals, vampire gods, etc. That's all true. Now, those beings that live in the underworld, they have different conditions than we do up here on the surface. They tend to live a lot longer as well, which is why if you read Admiral Byrd's story about how Admiral Byrd of the United States Navy went on this expedition to the North Pole, ended up going inside of the Earth through an opening at the North Pole, met these otherworldly Aryan beings, the Azir, basically, right? The Aryan, those of the air, or light beings, which is really what it translates into, my light, those of the light. That's pretty much what it translates into. The light is space. Space is full of light, okay? It's not black. It's not dark how it looks from underneath the dome of our world, okay? That's just because there's a big old bowl above us and a big old container. But check this out. When it breaks open, whoo, you're going to see some beautiful, also dangerous, okay? So I don't advise staring at it, okay? But if you happen to catch a glimpse, or if you're there after the plasma apocalypse, gravity's restored, everything's good, and you can look up and see through it, it's going to be beautiful. You're basically going to be looking into heaven. So, but yeah, those beings that live inside of our world, they have different conditions as well that add to a prolonged life, which is why there's also prehistoric animals and stuff that live down there. Admiral Byrd met some of these ancient beings. They talked to him and they sent him back up here and said, you're a representative of the military of humanity. You need to go up there and talk to your brothers and sisters and tell them to calm down. Okay. Calm down. Start working on the inside. Start working on your peaceful selves. Start working on loving each other and seeing each other as equals. And get rid of all those weapons and stuff. Otherwise, we can't really help you guys out. Like a huge, huge disaster is coming your way. This is exactly what was told to Admiral Byrd. A big, huge world storm is coming your way. And it's not going to be good if you don't change what's happening on the inside of yourselves. Which is also why I always tend to go along with that. That's also the message that the Bigfoot have given to people who have contacted the Bigfoot, who also have access to the inner earth. I had to go ahead and approve that comment there. I don't know why I did that. I don't know if the word Nazi was like on a block list or something. But anyway, Unlearn the Systems in the chat and says, JayDreamerZ, I came across some research into how our plasma is starting to take over our red blood cells. I would be interested in reading that. I'm glad you told me about that. Rue, I am Groot says, JayDreamerZ, I'll be able to give in the future more. Such a broke Christmas this year. Oh, that's all right. We're doing food, family, and friends focus off of gifts in the hearts. Hey, that's what we're doing too. We're actually for Christmas at our house. I kind of broke the rule because I did buy Jenny a couple of presents, and I'm probably gonna buy my son some presents. But for the most part, we're gonna be making gifts for other people. That's the plan. You know, that's what I'm gonna try to do. But I'm also gonna go visit my extended family, my mother and my brother. You guys met my brother, Adam. I'm going to drive down to New Mexico in a couple weeks and go visit them. which should not interfere with any of my videos because it's going to be like a Sunday. So possibly might have to take Monday off. So I might have to possibly not do anything on Monday, but definitely going to do some kind of a Christmas special. Definitely going to do that. Plasma Apocalypse Christmas. I'll probably call it that. That sounds perfect. All right. Yeah, Rue, don't even worry about it. You've already donated like a whole bunch to my family. And believe me, you're in our thoughts and sending you good vibes as well as a few other key people all the time. So thank you. I really appreciate it. It's nice. It's really nice. You know what? As far as money goes, okay, I was actually thinking about this the other day because I was like, man, I wish I had $1 million. Like who doesn't think that, right? I was like, God, if I only had $1 million, man, I would do such good things with my money, right? I would be able to just like live my dream and write all these books and travel to the pyramids and do on location videos and all this stuff, right? I was fantasizing. I was daydreaming, or I was JayDreaming. Either way, I was thinking about that and I was like, well, what if I could get 100,000 people to each donate $10? I would be a millionaire. And there's way more than 100,000 people in the world. But then I said, wait, why am I being so selfish? Why don't I extend that to everybody else? There's 7 billion people in the world, allegedly. What if they all donated $10? We put it into a collective pool, redistributed the money. I calculated that every single person in most of North and South America and Australia and the UK could all have $1 million. Every single one of us. Anyway, it was just interesting things that were happening in my mind. And then I started talking to a close friend of mine, and my mind drifted away from the fantasy of wanting $1 million and started accepting the truth of how rich I already am, right? Which is an even better thought, especially around this time of year. Clarence Wilkerson's in the chat and says, JayDreamerZ, great topic. Everything is everything, aliens included. Spaces outward, inward, all over. We live in a huge fractalverse. Peace. Peace, Clarence. Vegan Demon says, JayDreamerZ, couldn't you live and travel in an RV to do that? I don't know how I'm going to drive an RV to the Great Pyramids and like possibly. I'm sure I could see a lot of stuff in an RV, but I don't have an RV and RVs cost a lot of money. I bought my car. The car that I have right now, I couldn't be more thankful for it. I got it for $1,000, which is pretty cheap for a decent car, like a big SUV that fits me and everything. It's really old, but dude, it does its job, and it, knock on wood, wherever that is, it's not broke down or anything, so everything's good. So I'm very happy with my little car, my little house, my little place, all of that stuff. So I'm good. And anything that comes my way is definitely an extra blessing, an extra bonus my way. So I appreciate it. I definitely do. All right. Does anybody else in the chat have anything? I can go to Mexico. You're totally right. Possibly. I have to get a passport. I mean, that shouldn't be too hard, right? Oh, you're totally right. There are plenty of pyramids in Mexico. I'm going to have to give that some serious thought. I really am. I mean, it's still going to take a lot of money to go to some places like that. And there are some other stuff that I'd like to do as well. But yeah, I would definitely like to go check out the ancient ruins down in old South America. Unlearn the System says, look in the mirror and you will see an interdimensional being. Hey, real quick, I want to give a shout out to one of my longtime close friends, right? In real life, I don't have a whole lot of I'm not a social butterfly, believe it or not, right? I am fun to hang around with, I believe, but I've never really been a huge people person, so I don't have a whole lot of real tight, close group of friends or anything. So the small amount of close friends I've made in my life mean a lot to me, especially if they stay in contact. So I want to give a shout out to my friend Keith. Keith, you know who you are. He's out there driving trucks, getting it done, working hard to deliver people's stuff for the holidays or whatever it is. I don't know. He drives big rigs and stuff, but he's a good guy and he's got a big heart. And that's always been one of my favorite things about him as a person is his childlike curiosity and wonder at the world, as well as having such an open and loving heart in the same way that children do when they just see everybody as being their friend. He literally calls everyone his brother. So I want to give a huge shout out to my buddy Keith. Oh, and if you're watching, I'll probably give you a call after the show is over with, because he wants to talk to me about the plasma apocalypse. He's very interested in it, so I'll probably give him a call. Hey, remember also, if you see the Skype logo, that means the Circuits of Time are open. If you want to join the Circuits of Time membership tier, all you have to do is just click the join button, go to Circuits of Time, click on that, and then it's going to give you instructions to go to the community tab, which is where you'll find my secret email address. You just plug that into Skype and give me a call during any of my live streams. Do not call me when I'm not live streaming, because that's not what it's for. It's not a personal give me a call whenever you want kind of thing. Okay. Although I don't mind if people drop me messages, but I'm just going to be honest. Remember what I was saying about the gods coming down and they have to like talk to all these people and it takes up all their time and then they have to appoint other people to do it. I don't want that to happen to me. Like, I don't want there to be a JayDreamerZ fan club where I can't personally engage people one-on-one and there's like other people doing it for me. I mean, that has an element of being cool in itself, but you know. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling now, so I think we're going to wrap things up. We had a good chat about it. We talked about aliens a little bit. We talked about the Anunnaki, the Elven race, Fractalverse Travelers, and much more. Thank you for joining me on tonight's episode of Ancient Oblivion. Stay tuned tomorrow, where we're going to go more into the lighter side of life, talking about good vibes, where I do my series called The Sylvan Lining. And the Sylvan Lining is just acknowledging for you truth seekers, hey man, it gets tough sometimes, right? Sometimes we get lost in this maze. Let's take a day to breathe, to return to the most important things of our world, which is love, looking inward, relaxing, giving ourselves some time off, taking a vacation from our problems, just like What About Bob, and really focusing on the good news instead of the bad, right? Until then, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.